Can't decide and torn between a romantic, comedy, action, or an indie film to watch for the weekend? Well. Golden State Media Concepts Movie Podcast is your ultimate guide to the latest movies. Join us as we dissect the latest on the blockbusters. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Movie Podcast.
To the GSMC Movie Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Keith, and I am joined by, drumroll, the same person every week.
Cynthia, here I am. I was about to say, did you forget my name for a quick second? You're like, and I'm.
No, I was trying to figure out what kind of like bit I wanted to do to try and be funny. You know? Mm-hmm. Every now and then I try to make a good joke.
A dad joke.
Speaking of good jokes, great comedy. This week, we mentioned that we were going to do this last week.
Yes.
So we just decided to do it. This week, we're talking about all of our favorite Jim Carrey movies. We have 5.
There's so many, really.
Oh my goodness.
I included 2. You included 3, but really there's so many films that I love.
I know.
One that I didn't include in our show notes, and I forgot that he was starring in this film. I don't know if you ever seen these movies. It's on Netflix. The series of Unfortunate Events.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he played Uncle whatever his name is.
The guy with the ankle. Yes, the guy with like the ankle tattoo. I totally forgot that he was one of the main characters in those films. I'm like, wait, these are so good. But I didn't include it in today's show notes. I think the most of the films that you and I chose for this week are more of his older films, nothing too new.
Yes Man is relatively new, 2008. Oh my gosh.
We're in 2020. I know. It's crazy because I remember 2008 vividly. I was in 8th grade. I remember that year. I
came out my junior year of high school. I didn't even realize that.
That's crazy. Time flies, man.
Oh, wait. Yeah, that was my junior year.
Junior year.
Wow.
I was in 8th grade in middle school.
Wait, no, that would have been my senior year. Yeah, it came out during my senior year.
But yeah, I mean, it's crazy because 2018 doesn't seem like it was that far away.
2008, you mean?
Or 2008.
It doesn't seem like it was that long ago.
I know, but
it was over a decade ago.
That's crazy.
That's just crazy. I can't believe that I'm that young/old. Like
I know. We're
I'm
like
that yold.
Yold, I know. Because we're at that age where it's like, what are the kids doing? You know, like the kids in high school.
Oh my gosh.
They're all on TikTok. That's like their Instagram. TikTok.
Like the Kesha song?
What Kesha song? Oh, yes, the Kesha song. Yes, the Kesha song. So it's funny because we are in that weird age where it's like, we're not like what the young kids are doing right now. But
we're not hip anymore.
Exactly. We're not that hip anymore either.
And like soon our hips won't be hip anymore. We'll have to get replacements.
Well, no, I work out for that. Hopefully my hips be hippin' until I'm like 60 years old. That's the goal.
Hippin' until you're hippity hopping into the grave.
Oh my God.
Well, you keep your original hips until you die. I think that's an optimistic.
Unless you get a hip replacement.
Anyway, so we already talked about the first one that we both love. Yes Man.
Yes Man. Definitely one of my top favorite, if not, I don't know. It's tough to say if it's like my number one favorite movie from Jim Carrey because, again, I love so many of his movies. Yes Man, I definitely felt like I needed to include because I just watched it this morning.
Yeah.
And
well, it's a classic.
It's a classic. And I love the cast as well in this film.
It's Zooey Deschanel.
Love her. Bradley Cooper.
Awesome.
John Michael Higgins. I forget what other movies he's in. Maybe The Hangover.
I don't actually think that he was in The Hangover, but he has been in a lot. He was in Bad Teacher. He was in A Million Ways to Die in the West. He was in The Bicentennial Man.
Pitch Perfect.
Yeah, he's a great actor. He plays the doctor or the guy who writes the book about saying yes all the time, or is that?
Not in this film. So in this film, he's actually the one who suggests to Carl, who in this case is Jim Carrey. He's the one who pushes him to like go to this yes seminar. So he's like a little crazy. He says yes to like every opportunity.
Yes.
And then who else? Danny Masterson. He's the one from that 70s show. The guy with like curly hair. And then Terrence Stamp. He's the guy who leads the seminar, and he's like the wise one. And
he plays that same part in like a lot of his movies. He
does
a good job
with it. His eyes are like so piercing, like blue.
I know.
So scary almost. But yeah, for those of you who don't know, hopefully you have seen Yes Man, but it's just pretty much a man, in this case Jim Carrey, Carl, who challenges himself to say yes to everything, every opportunity. You ask him, can you give me a ride to the store? He has to say yes. Or like, do you want to go with me to this party? He has to say yes. So like every opportunity, proposal, question has to be answered with a yes. That's pretty much the whole theme of the film. And the film is actually based on an autobiographical book written by Danny Wallace, who's a British author, producer, and journalist who spent a year answering yes to any given question or proposal, and he recorded the results. So it's actually based, so it's based
and
off
also
this
terrifying.
I know. Can you imagine saying yes to like every single thing that's proposed to you?
Oh, like, and what if someone figures out that that's what you're doing? So it's like, can I have $5?
And that's exactly what happens in the
$20?
movie. Like in one of the scenes.
Can I have $1,000? Yes.
I know. Because then supposedly, like if you say no, you're like, you know, in the film, it portrays it as if you say no, all these like bad things are going to.
It's like a karmic relationship, the energy that you're putting out into the universe type of thing.
He kept saying like, I can't break the covenant. That's what Jim Carrey kept saying, like, I can't break the covenant. So it's interesting. I think that it definitely is, I mean, highly relatable to everybody because it just shows us. I mean, in my case, like I've definitely been in situations, especially with jobs, including this one. Like I was scared to even come to the interview or even apply because I thought I wasn't qualified. I was scared. I let the fears get the best of me. But then, you know, just like putting yourself out there, saying yes can open many more doors and opportunities. So I definitely like love the film for the message that it, you know, portrays to the audience members. And
and it's funny at the end of the film, part of the whole thing is that like, well, you have to learn to like find an actual balance between being open to opportunity and like saying no.
You have to weigh out the consequences.
But part of the point of the practice of saying yes all the time at first is just to force yourself into that place of being uncomfortable that's going to actually solicit change in your life. And that's a pretty accurate depiction of what it takes to solicit change and to self-actualize as an individual. You have to be uncomfortable. And the kind of like hilarious situations that arise because of that uncomfortability are, I mean, they're what make the movie so great. Now, quick question. Was it just me, or was the Zooey Deschanel, Jim Carrey romantic pairing like a little bit weird at first because you felt like he was a little too old for her?
Yes. And in real life, I think he's like 12 years older than her. I read they actually have the same birthday, but he was born, he was born in 1962 and then she was born in 1980. But yeah, he definitely does look in the film, looks a few years older than Zooey Deschanel.
Yeah.
But you quickly get past that because you realize how they're both so dorky and quirky.
Yes.
And Zooey Deschanel, I love her. Her character, she reminds me so much like in this film, the exact same character she plays in New Girl, the TV show.
Yeah.
Like that quirky, dorky.
Typecast.
Yes.
Yeah.
And actually, when I was researching and looking more into kind of like fun facts about Yes Man, I found that just like his character, Jim Carrey said yes to many things during the production of filming this movie. So he actually, like in the movie, he learned how to play guitar. He learned how
Which solicits an opportunity for him to save somebody from jumping
and committing suicide. Which is my favorite.
And he probably actually sang that song.
Oh, he did.
Oh, yeah. And he has a really, like, it's really funny how often actors that you don't know can sing. And he does an excellent rendition of Jumper by Third Eye Blind. It's so good.
Yeah, that's what the song's from. Like, that for sure was one of my most favorite and memorable moments of the film.
Well, he goes, I wish you would step back from that ledge, my friend. And then everybody starts singing along. It's
I know.
Really,
and then when he pulls him in, he's like, I got blisters on my finger. Like, I remember my brother and I always making jokes from that one line he made.
Yeah.
But yeah, so just how the whole theme of the film is, you know, saying yes to every opportunity that comes your way. Jim Carrey was actually applying that same mentality,
while he was filming.
So he said yes to learning how to play the guitar. He said yes to learning basic Korean, which he spoke Korean in the film.
And it's hilarious to hear Jim Carrey speak Korean.
I know.
That's
it
so
really
great.
is.
Yeah.
But I mean, to my ears, it sounds pretty fluent. I don't know to a Korean, someone who's Korean, right? They probably, I don't know.
It's just the juxtaposition. It's just not something that you would expect.
Right.
And then all of a sudden he's speaking Korean. It's just great.
And then he also he said yes to learning. There's a scene where he's riding a sport bike, in a robe, and he's actually riding it. It's not a stunt double. And bungee jumping. In the film, he also bungee jumped off.
Of course.
And that also isn't a stunt double. So he said yes to all of these opportunities in the film, which, I mean, I think that's what makes it so great is because throughout the movie, there's so many funny and random scenes.
I know.
And I just love it. And his manic expressions too make it that much better because it's like, that's what defines him. That's Jim Carrey, like all the weird facial expressions he makes and like that grin.
This is the one where he wraps the tape around his face at the beginning of it.
Yes,
right? Oh my
yes.
gosh,
at the office,
scene.
he wraps it like. He's so funny. He is so funny.
Yeah. So we're going to keep talking about this movie for just a couple more minutes, but we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back.
Want to know the latest and hottest music hitting the airwaves? Don't be left out. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Music Podcast. Keith keeps you on the loop with everything you need to know from pop, rock, hip-hop, and the top 40. And we'll throw in news of your favorite artists, concert and tour dates, and so much more. Listen no further because this is the gold standard in music podcast.
Hello, and welcome back to GSMC Movie Podcast. We're going to continue on the discussion of Jim Carrey, Yes Man, and what a great movie it is. And originally, casting, they were looking at Jack Black to do the lead role.
Which also would have been an excellent choice in my opinion. Jack Black's great.
Jack Black, he is so funny as well. So I think either or would have been a great option, whether they went with Jim Carrey or Jack Black. Definitely would have had a different twist to it, but still would have been very comical. So what was your favorite scene or scenes from Yes Man? Is it the same one as mine, the one where he's playing the guitar,
that
singing?
one is up there. I do like when he goes to get the loan at the bank, or someone is asking him for a loan. I can't remember if he's a loan officer or if he's asking for a small personal
Yeah, he works
loan.
at a bank and people are coming to get loans.
And it ends up that he starts this whole new branch of the bank, and it's just really sweet and feel-goody. And then there's a scene where they're like at the gas station at night with Zooey Deschanel and Jim Carrey that I really loved. And then, of course, there's a particular scene that's like
I already know what you're going to say.
Very much the PG-13 aspect of this movie, so I won't go too in-depth on it, but he helps an older woman move a piece of furniture and receives something pretty funny as a thank you. So that was pretty funny.
Something weird that I thought, so the movie is rated PG-13, but I thought in rated PG-13 movies, you're not allowed to say the F word, because he definitely said that a couple times throughout the film.
I think you have a quota of F words that you can say. It's not like
it's not too heavy on the language, but I definitely caught them. Like, it's PG-13 because usually PG-13, or at least films that say the F bomb a lot,
they're
are
rated
R for the language. But
I mean, this was like one or two scenes away from being a rated R movie.
It was.
Yeah.
And especially there is some nudity, like at the very end of the film when, again, it's another yes seminar and Terrence comes out and everybody is naked in the audience. So,
yeah, it's pretty funny.
But yes, this is definitely up there in our favorite Jim Carrey movies. And I want to move on to the next film, which this one I think really set the tone for Jim Carrey and allowed him to shine within the cinema industry, and that is the 1994 film, The Mask. This is a film that I watched that made me like fall in love with him. I definitely didn't watch it in the year 1994 because I wasn't even born that year.
Whoa, wait.
I was born in 95.
Oh my goodness.
But I remember watching
old.
it. Stop. I remember watching this probably when I was 10 years old, so early 2000s for sure. The first time I saw like the green mask, and to this day, I mean, even during Halloween, people pick this costume.
Oh yeah.
And like go full out because I mean, he has like a banana colored suit,
which is great.
The green mask.
Yeah.
You know, the big grin, big teeth. And this film was directed by Chuck Russell. And again, the cast are Jim Carrey, Ben Stein, Cameron Diaz. I forgot she was in that movie. Cameron Diaz, Peter Green, Amy Yazbek, Peter Reigart, Richard Jenny, and Nancy Fish. And there's many more, but those are like the stars of this film.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And this actually, The Mask was one of Jim Carrey's highest grossing films, which is over $227 million. And the first one, his highest.
That's a lot of money.
That is a lot of money. I think out of top 10, I was reading an article, this is top 6. So The Mask is rated number 6 as one of his highest grossing films. Number 1 is, of course, The Grinch Who Stole Christmas.
Right, because people buy it every year, yeah.
Every year. Yeah. And I forgot also that he was the Grinch in that film. Obviously because of the costume and all the makeup he's wearing. I forgot that he was starring in it. But this film, I need to refresh my mind a little bit. I had to watch the trailer because, again, I haven't seen it in quite some time. But I'm going to give you guys like a quick synopsis to refresh your memory. So Jim Carrey plays this character named Stanley Ipkiss. And he's an incredibly nice guy in the film, but sometimes he can be too nice to... You know, he's kind of like a pushover, especially when it comes to confrontations. He lets people walk all over him in the film. And I don't know how it leads to him finding a mask like in a river in the water. Yep. He puts the mask on and immediately like his inner self, his inner mischievous self comes out and he turns into this like wild cartoon character where he just is like super ballsy and all the fears that he has when he doesn't have the mask on, all of those come out when he puts the mask on, and he like starts like going up to women and being like overly flirtatious. And then I forget he somehow gets involved with like street gang members. Again, I haven't
He's kind of an anti-hero.
Right.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen this film in quite some time. So again, I had to like refresh my memory a little bit, but definitely super memorable. Again, especially with like the colored suit, the colored face, which by the way, you know how long it took him to do his makeup every time he filmed?
Oh my gosh. I am interested in this factoid.
4 hours.
4
every
hours in the
time.
makeup chair?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
I would like, my butt would like just hurt
he
so
may have been
bad.
able to stand up for some of it.
I know, but, and I want to also share with you some interesting facts about the film. Again, there are so many, so I had to like just pick a few because there are so many like weird things behind the scenes in creating this film. And for one, so the banana yellow suit that Jim Carrey wears in the film, he wears it multiple times throughout the film, right?
Yeah, well, every time he puts the mask on, he...
But really, in total, it's only 5 minutes that he wears it.
No way.
Yes, 5 minutes, I read. So really, the scenes are like
so
really
weird.
short. I know,
Yeah.
isn't that weird?
It's just so memorable to us.
I know, but I forget
It's a
how
great
long.
looking suit. I want one.
A yellow one? A banana yellow
suit. I could rock that.
A yellow one.
Yeah, I don't know if I would wear.
Maybe
like,
you could
green
become
face
the
mask.
mask character for Halloween. 2020 Halloween.
Yeah.
We got to see it. We have to see it.
Oh,
and you're tall
I have
too.
to wear that hat.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
love
right.
the hat. The detective hat that he wears.
Yes.
It's just like this flat brimmed, big, like wide.
What do you
hat.
call those? Because those are kind of
No
in right
idea.
now. A
They're
lot of guys
super
wear
cool.
them.
Yeah, no, it's a super cool hat, and like I would wear it if it wasn't so like hipstery. It just
Yeah, a little.
You know, it feels like pretentious people ruin good things, and like those hats ruined by pretentious people. So pretentious people, stop wearing cool stuff so that I can wear it.
That's funny. But also speaking on the suit that Jim Carrey wears, so it's based on a suit which his mother made for him in his first attempt to a stand-up comedy. So I thought that was like pretty sweet.
It's very sweet
because again, The Mask was like the first big major film that he did, and the suit that he wore, it is like a replica of a suit he wore for his first stand-up comedy show. So I was like, oh, that's like pretty sweet to kind of bring that little detail to a really popular film.
Yeah.
And another crazy thing that I found out is, I mean, we know Cameron Diaz, she's in a lot of like really popular films as well. This was her first acting role ever.
Wait, was it really?
Yes.
That's so cool.
The Mask.
I love Cameron Diaz.
Me too.
She is awesome.
She's awesome. She had to try out for it 12 times.
No.
12 times, which is crazy because she's like an amazing actress. She's a well-known actress now.
Tons of stuff, yeah.
But casting directors were hesitant to bring her on because at the time she was like with the modeling agency. Her whole world was just modeling, and she had no previous acting experience. So casting directors were very hesitant to bring her on. I think she was Tina. She was Tina in the film, but she did a great job. I mean, in being his lover, Jim Carrey's lover. And another little quick note here, or fact. So the movie is based on a comic book. But this comic book is not like your typical Superman, Batman, superhero style comic book.
Okay.
The original comic book of The Mask, it's a series. It's adult oriented and definitely dark and twisted.
Yeah.
So it centers around this in the comic book. It's every time this individual puts on the mask, he becomes a psychopath killer, and he kills his victims in gruesome fashion. So it's very different compared to the Mask because this is more family friendly and
quote unquote.
Family friendly.
Yeah.
But they definitely added, I was reading that they wanted to suit the film more towards Jim Carrey's comedic side.
Yeah.
Because Jim Carrey didn't want it to be so dark and twisted, and he didn't.
Well, there's definitely kind of like a dark and twisted vibe that you get. If I remember correctly, the way that they explain the mask becoming the mask is that it's like a spirit that's trapped in the mask, or like there's some sort of, I believe it's specifically like voodoo magic type of a thing that imbues this mask with dark power. And like when you're not wearing the mask, it is kind of creepy looking.
It
like
is.
It's like this
it's
fleshy
like wooden,
brown wooden tone. Yeah.
It almost looks like something like some voodoo type.
Exactly. Yeah, that's
what I thought.
Point. Yeah. So they definitely do include some of those like darker elements in juxtaposition to like the funniness that Jim Carrey brings to the table, because I believe that part of the conflict is that he wants to become more like the person who he is when he wears the mask.
Behind the mask, right.
Yeah. And so I think that that there's like a conflict specifically where he's like, no, I'm not going to put the mask on, and it's like it's fighting him to put the mask on, which it's really funny that they are able to portray this deep sociological idea in such an like interesting and kind of like ironic and funny way, because ultimately I think part of what makes The Mask really good and why we like it is that it portrays something that we do in society where we put on a mask and try to pretend that we are somebody else in order to get people to like us or in order to do certain things. So ultimately Jim Carrey, when he's wearing the mask, his character is more himself than he is when he isn't wearing the mask. So that's I think part of like the journey that he goes through as an individual in the film to like self-actualization, because ultimately in the end he gets rid of the mask, right? Right,
yeah, he does. And he actually spoke about like his character in The Mask, and he said that when he first looked at the what is that called? The script, he said that it defines him perfectly, that he could really relate to the character. So in a way he says that it wasn't so hard to portray that like mischievous side of him, because he says that's really how I feel sometimes on the inside. Like, and that's what he's known for. Again, like all his comedy stuff, he kind of has that same, like those same characteristics, I feel, in The Mask. And I think, again, that's why this is one of his most iconic films, is because when you think of Jim Carrey, a lot of people think of The Mask. Again, depending on what generation. If you're like
of course
12 years old, 10, listening, you're probably like, haven't even seen this film.
No,
but
or
like,
even heard of it.
Right. But no, definitely probably like top 5 of mine for Jim Carrey films. Would you say so for yourself too? Or something other? Because you wrote 3 different ones than I did.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd put The Mask in my top 5, but I really like Jim Carrey in like the kind of like serious / wacky roles more so than just like the straight comedic roles. So I'd say top 10. It's probably
Top
number
10.
6.
He has so many. Like, it's hard to choose from. It really is. I just chose these top 2 because, again, the Yes Man I just watched this morning, and The Mask, that's the first Jim Carrey film that I watched, and I immediately was hooked on him. But there's so many more. Again, A Series of Fortunate Events, Bruce Almighty.
Oh yeah,
that one's a good one.
Yeah.
There's so many.
Yeah.
But I think we should come to a quick break right now, and then when we come back, Keith is going to share with you guys his top 3 favorite Jim Carrey films.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC movie podcast. Right before the break, we were talking about The Mask, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
The Mask.
Forgot
and you're
for
like,
a second.
The Mask.
Yeah. And so we talked about Cynthia's, like, her 2 favorite Jim Carrey films. So we're going to talk about my, I guess, 3 favorite Jim Carrey films.
Yes, they're different from the ones that I chose.
Very different. So the very first one is a movie called The Truman Show. And if you haven't seen this movie, I highly recommend it. It's directed by Peter Weir, who is also known for the Dead Poet Society. It's funny, a lot of the directors that directed Jim Carrey movies also directed Robin Williams movies.
Oh,
like
really?
Yeah. Well, like Dead Poet Society is a Robin Williams film, and then another one of the films that I really liked, that director did Patch Adams. Patch Adams is another famous Robin Williams film. So it's just funny because I guess Jim Carrey and Robin Williams kind of do have some similarities between the two of them. So it's a 1998 film that starred Jim Carrey, Laura Linney, Noah Emmerich, Natasha McElhone, Holland Taylor, and Ed Harris. The main character, Truman Burbank, is the unsuspecting star of The Truman Show, a reality television program broadcast live around the clock worldwide. He has spent his entire life in the seaside town of Sea Haven Island, which in reality is an enormous set near Hollywood, equipped with state-of-the-art technology to simulate day and night and weather conditions, as well as 5,000 cameras to record Truman's every move. The producers discouraged Truman from leaving Sea Haven by instilling him with aquaphobia through the death of his TV father in a boating accident, which is hilariously morally questionable and totally brushed over, but I love it. And by constantly broadcasting and printing messages of the dangers of traveling. All of Sea Haven's other residents are actors, And Christof, the show's creator and executive producer, seeks to capture Truman's real emotion and human behavior and give audiences a relatable everyman.
So everything in his life is fabricated.
Literally everything. And that's part of...
That's terrible.
Oh my gosh.
That's absolute, like living your life in a lie.
Yes.
That's actually the worst thing.
Yes. And no, and like even right down to like his fear of the ocean is synthesized by the director, the show's creator, Christof, which is like amazing. I mean, the part of what makes this movie so good, in my opinion, is how absolutely horrifying the premise is. Mm-hmm. Like, I believe the trailer starts out with, what if everything in your life was a lie? But like, everything in Truman's life is the truth to him. Like, right. Even the way that he handles different things. Like, I think he drinks a Coca-Cola and his mom is like, you got to drink with the label out, honey. And like, so they manipulate him into doing product placement by convincing him that that's like the right thing to do when he handles things. And he'll like say catchphrases about different products, in order. So like he'd say like, the best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup. And he would say that because his mom would have trained him to say that. She would say like, oh, it's just this funny thing that I say. Is
that like to advertise throughout the show?
Yeah.
To the audience members.
Yeah, so that's how they sell ad
space.
It's
kind of genius. It's actually brilliant.
No, the whole premise of this movie is like insidiously genius. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's part of why I really, really like it, is because like it's the thoroughness with which they create this illusion is semi-plausible, because if you could get somebody as soon as they were like literally when they were born to be put into this whole different world and instill them with like your own set like of fears and indoctrinate them in a particular way, like you almost could pull this off, because part of one of the main questions that this movie asks is like, what is reality? Is reality like what you perceive it to be? Is there a reality that exists outside of your perception? If there is a reality outside of your perception, do you actually want to know it? Is one of the main questions that gets gets asked throughout the film. And ultimately, it's a perfect story about the metaphor of like self-actualization / like realization. And it is kind of like a movie version of Plato's The Cave. Are you familiar with that? So, okay, so basically Plato's The Cave is this idea that we are sitting in this cave and we're staring at a wall, and on that wall are shadows that are like dancing back and forth, and we believe the shadows to be real because we can't turn around and see that there's something in front of the fire behind us that's casting the light, and we can't see the things that are casting the shadows. So we think the shadows are real. We don't know what reality actually is.
That's kind of crazy, and it makes me think a little too hard. I'm like, are we living in a lie right now? Like, what is life? But that makes total sense, and I think that's how you said that's what makes the film so great. It really just makes you sit there and think like, I mean, what is reality? Like, there's multiple realities, really.
And you get attached to the character as he goes through this journey of realizing that he is the character on a TV show. And like in the end, I don't think I've ever rooted so hard for a protagonist. At the end of a film, at the end of the film, he gets to decide if he wants to stay in the show or go out into the real world. And one of the catalysts is this girl that came on to, well, there's activists who will sneak onto the show in order to try to tell Truman that he is the main character of a TV show and he's being lied to because they believe that that's morally wrong. So there is one particular girl who is able to like kind of accomplish this thing because she has such a deep impact on Truman. And so he is like constantly searching her out and wants to find her, but can't find her and can't figure out how to get to her. And that's part of like his midlife crisis that he goes through. And it gets like really dark, and Jim Carrey plays this character just so effectively that you feel like he's real in a way, and you're really rooting for him to find like the enlightenment And at the end, when he's faced with this choice of like, do I take a step into the real world or do I stay in this safe bubble where like everything is curated for me, knowing that there's more out there? Can I live like that? You're like, for a moment, you feel like he might choose to just stay in the bubble. And like, it's just amazing the way that they do this film. I'm just super, super impressed.
And this was directed again by Peter Weir.
Yeah. He hasn't done much of note other than the Dead Poets Society. So, lighter note, just like some overall like movie trivia, because I really like it when
I like
do this
these.
segment.
I like these.
It's super fun. So the movie the original script. It was called The Malcolm Show, which I'm glad that they didn't do the Malcolm Show.
I'm glad
Truman
too.
makes so much more sense. And people on the set were not allowed to quote or utter any phrases from Jim Carrey's like comedy films.
Like previous films?
Yeah, his previous comedy films. So like you could not quote The Mask on set. Like you would not be allowed to say anything from those other films because I think the director just really wanted it to be
its own.
Yeah, its own thing. And then a lot of people will be familiar with this movie because of the movie poster, which is rumored to have cost $75,000 to commission. So for the artist to make that poster, it's rumored that it cost him or cost the studio $75,000. That's crazy. And then another interesting tidbit about this film: there are 300 extras in this movie, and most of them are from the town Seaside, Florida, where the movie was shot.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's a lot of extras. That's a lot of people you got to pay.
I know, and they all get paid SAG minimum, which is Studio Actor Guild minimum.
Wow.
Because there's a union. Actually, I don't know if there was a union at that time. I would guess there was.
So the extras got paid, but Truman didn't even get paid for the show that he's starring in throughout the film. That's messed up.
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons that the activists were like upset with the producer / director of the film.
In the like movie,
in the movie, yeah.
Christoph,
so
right?
Why people in the real world are upset with Christoph, and like ultimately Christoph wanted to like film the conception of Jim Carrey's child with his wife, who was an actress who was paid to be his wife.
Wow.
So like there is just a ton of moral gray area that this film just brushes over really quickly.
Right.
But it does it in a way that's like, wow, this is really heinously evil, and I am riveted, and I have to watch it. And ultimately, it makes you kind of feel like the people who are watching Truman throughout his entire life, because those people are just as evil as the producer is, and like it's just
there's
so
viewers.
Good.
If there's viewership,
layers.
right?
Yeah, there's so many layers to this film that. Yeah, you almost wouldn't believe it's a Jim Carrey film until you see Jim Carrey acting in it, and he is still Jim Carrey. It's really, really good. And then, so my next film, another serious film that Jim Carrey was in, and I'm sure by now anybody who knows film has guessed my next favorite is going to be Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. It's a 2004 American romantic science fiction tragicomedy. Wow, that is a mouthful.
It is.
It's written by Charlie Kaufman and directed by Michael Gondry, and it follows an estranged couple who have erased each other from their memories, which is pretty interesting. Mm-hmm. The title of the film is a quotation from the 1717 poem Eloisa to Abelard by Alexander Pope, which I actually have a book of Alexander Pope's poetry, which is neither here nor there. So the summary: shy, soft-spoken Joel Barish and unrestrained free spirit Clementine Krasinski meet on Long Island on a railroad train from Montauk to Rockville Center. Both had felt the need to travel to Montauk that day, and they almost immediately connect, feeling drawn to each other despite their contrasting personalities. Although Joel and Clementine do not realize it, they are former lovers, now separated after having dated for 2 years. After a fight, Clementine had hired the New York City firm Lacuna Incorporated to erase all of her memories of their relationship. Upon discovering this from his friends, Rob and Carrie, Joel had been angered and saddened and decided to undergo the procedure himself, a process that takes place while they're both sleeping. So they both have had their memories erased, so they don't know that they dated each other.
Why did they do that? Did they purposely? Because look, I haven't even watched this film.
Yes,
I
assumed that you had.
Yeah, no, I have not watched. I have not watched this film. So do they purposely erase?
Yes. So
Okay.
the main premise of the movie, the big thing that you have to like suspend your disbelief about is that there's a company that exists that can erase memories from your mind. And so Clementine erases her memory of ever having dated Jim Carrey's character, Joel. And when Joel finds out that she did that, he too erases his memories.
To like forget each other.
Exactly. And so I think he gets a postcard in the mail, and that's how he finds out that she did that. And he like saves the postcard. So there's this like this weird tension between the two of them because they like, it feels like they know each other, but they don't. And there's just this odd sense of deja vu throughout the entire film. It's just super trippy and really interesting.
It sounds interesting.
Yeah, and like it kind of does something similar to the Truman Show of like what is real, what is reality, and those type of things, which is like super cool. And it's on a lot of film buffs like top movies ever.
Really?
Yeah, it's just really, really interesting. It's kind of like I told you about The Killing of a Sacred Deer. Remember when we talked about that movie?
One. Still need to watch it, by the way.
Yeah, I would watch this before you watch that. This is like a more accessible version of that in the way that it portrays the horror genre, because it is scary and it is a thriller, and it's super, super enjoyable. I can't highly recommend it enough. But we are running short on time, so we're going to take one more quick break, and then we'll tell you some interesting facts about the movie, and we'll talk about my last favorite movie as well as a trailer for another film that we want to talk about. So we'll be right back.
Watching TV has changed over time. Streaming has become the new norm. That's why Golden State Media Concepts television podcast dives headfirst to the world of cord cutting. Want to be on the loop of what's hot in Netflix? Or if it's not a preference, what about original shows in Hulu? We've got you covered. Join us as we fill in the blank and talk about movies to stream and what show you should be binging. This is the Golden State Media Concepts television podcast.
Welcome back to GSMC Movie Podcast. Right before the break, Keith told us he's going to be sharing some cute little fun facts. Cute little fun facts about what's the movie? Eternal Sunshine
of the Spotless Mind.
There we go.
Yes.
So hit us with the first one. Hit us with the first one.
Hit us with the first one. It's about getting punched. Was that intentional?
Oh, it really is. Is it? That was not intentional.
Oh. Dang it. I was so excited.
I know. I'm not that clever. I'm not that clever. That was an unintentional dad joke.
Unintentional dad joke. So during the train scene, Kate Winslet punches Jim Carrey, and that was not staged or planned. And Jim Carrey's response is genuinely surprised, which is pretty
love
cool.
when it's scenes like that, when it's like real, not acted out.
Like when Aragorn kicks the orc head and he breaks his foot and screams. He actually broke his foot. Viggo Mortensen actually broke his foot. So that's like him really reacting. And then they stopped filming that day. So that was the last scene they filmed that day.
Speaking about like getting her in movies and actually being real, I'm going to go back to Yes Man really quick. So there's a scene in Yes Man where Jim Carrey, he's at this bar and he turns around and hits the waitress and like the tray flies and he falls straight on his back. They said that scene wasn't supposed to happen and that he fell too hard and broke 3 ribs from falling on his back.
Yeah.
That is not fun.
No.
But we were just talking right now, like, so I'm like, I just remembered reading that.
Yeah.
So.
And then all of the train shots were shot on board a real moving train. And what's really cool about that is that like the cinematography in this film is it's really interesting, and they hardly used any actual special effects. They did mostly practical effects. So like all of the weird, trippy scenes that you see in this movie, which there are a lot of them because it's like a psychological thriller type thing, they are all practical effects. So it would have been really difficult for them to get a lot of those shots on a train, which is pretty cool. And then the director who directed this film directs a show called Kidding, which I think it's either on like Stars or Showtime or HBO. I can't remember, but it's also stars Jim Carrey, and it's basically like Jim Carrey as like this quasi Mr. Rogers character. Mm-hmm. And it's about his like fall from grace and descent into madness, and it is absolutely incredible. That TV show, I think it only has maybe 2 seasons right now. I can't remember. It's not a ton of episodes, but it is so good. Yeah. If you watched Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Cynthia, then you have got to check out Kidding.
Kidding. So. I may need to because it's definitely the whole concept of the film sounds interesting.
Super interesting.
So no, I'm into it. And again, it stars Jim Carrey. We all know we're both fans. So
yes, absolutely.
It's hard not to like him.
It is. So we're going to move on to my favorite Jim Carrey funny movie, which most of us know him for, are his funny films. I wanted to talk about the movie Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, which is directed by Tom Shadyac and stars Jim Carrey, Sean Young, Courtney Cox, Tone Loc, which I was just informed is actually pronounced Loke, and Dan Marino of Miami Dolphins excellent quarterback fame. I just found out, we just did a quick search on Tone Loc. We didn't know who that was. No. And it's just always funny to see like musicians in movies.
Right.
Because they almost always go by their stage name and not their real name. But I feel like anyone who's familiar with Tone Loc would know him better by Tone Loc than if they put his real name. Just like we know LL Cool J, but we probably don't know
his real birth name. Yeah,
if he put his real birth name on there, we'd be like, who the heck is that?
You'd be surprised because sometimes it's reversed. Like, there's one, or like, T.I., right? T.I., a rapper.
Yeah.
He actually, in movies, he uses his birth name. Oh. Which is weird because when I see that, I'm like, oh, it's T.I. So I don't know. I think it depends, from person to person. But the majority of them do use their stage name. And if you don't listen to their music, then you're like, who the heck is this?
Yeah.
So it is funny. And as I was saying, so out of all the films that we chose for Jim Carrey, Ace Ventura: Pet Detective is my least favorite. But that's not to say that I'm not saying I hate the film or I don't like it. Just out of all the ones we've talked about, this one I don't know. I watched it, I think actually like a month ago. Super random. It was like on DirecTV, so I started watching it. And there is this one scene at the very end. It's a fighting scene. Yeah. And it's just so terrible. I mean.
Oh, it's awful.
This film is older. So, the acting and, the lighting and some of the cinematography may not be up to par as it is now, but.
Well, Tom Shadyac said that he thought this would end his career and Jim Carrey's career.
I could see that. I could see why he'd be a little frightened because there are certain scenes where I'm like, oh my God, that's just like totally fake,
Yes.
But again, that's just saying like if I had to list the top 5 films we just talked about, this would definitely be at the bottom of my list. But again, that's not to say.
Totally understandable.
Right, it's not.
Yeah. What's funny is this director, and he got opportunities to work with Jim Carrey again in 2 movies that performed really well, Liar Liar and Bruce Almighty. So actually I don't know if that Liar Liar is the one that Jim Carrey was in. It may have been the other Liar Liar, the one that had the guy from Malcolm in the Middle, Frankie Muniz.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It may have been that film, I'm not totally sure. And that was not a good film. But the one that is starring Jim Carrey as a lawyer who can't lie for a day is hilarious, and I love that movie. So if it is that movie, yeah.
They all have interesting plots. That's what I like about all the films that Jim Carrey's in. Is every single movie he does, they're all so different.
Yes. Yeah. And this one is, it's obvious that it's a Jim Carrey movie. And this one is infinitely better than the sequel. The sequel is absolutely like a trash film. And I've mentioned that before. It's like an undercover trash film that people don't think of as being a trash film because it has Jim Carrey in it. Right. But it is absolute garbage. It's just so bad. It's really funny. But, so originally they thought that they might cast Rob Schneider as this role, and I'm so glad that they didn't because Jim Carrey just does such an excellent job in it.
Right.
And then There's a hilarious cameo appearance by the band Cannibal Corpse, which is a metal band, which is totally out of place, and they play one of their most famous songs, which is pretty hilarious. Mm-hmm. So I really enjoy this one, partially because of how bad it is, if I'm being super honest.
About how bad, that's funny.
Yeah. But let's go. We want to talk real quick about a movie trailer that we're both a little excited about.
Yeah, it's coming out to theaters this Friday, January 31st.
Friday.
It's called The Rhythm Section, which I feel like the title of the movie doesn't even make sense with the plot. Like, we both said, we're like, what does that even mean?
I think that the rhythm section refers to like a specific, I don't know, so the synopsis says a woman embarks on a quest for revenge to punish those responsible for the death of her family who were tragically killed in a plane crash, and she's looking for the ones who orchestrated this plan. And the rhythm section usually refers to a portion of like a band. So the fact that they're using the word orchestrated, I think there's probably some like hidden metaphor or simile in there that's like, I don't know. And it's probably like one of those James Bond movies, like where the villain says like, today seems like a good day to die, Mr. Bond.
Right.
Like he says the title.
This is from the producers of James Bond.
Yeah, so I would just guess that they're going to say at some point like, you know, like I'm just the violin player. You're looking for the rhythm section. And like,
yeah, maybe.
You know, like it's gonna be one of those corny things because this seems like a action film that's trying
like drama.
A little too hard to be serious. Because it's like Blake Lively with the short action girl haircut. She takes no prisoners and drives cars off of cliffs.
That caught me off guard because she has she fakes an accent so well, first of all. I don't know what accent she's doing in the trailer, but I didn't realize it was her until they zoomed into her face and she was on the short hair. I was like, that's Gossip Girl. That's Gossip Girl, Blake Lively.
I know there's a scene where she's got her long hair and like I absolutely recognize her with the long hair.
But the short hair is kind of hard. And then also she has like that accent. So I think I'm interested to see how she plays this character, how her character develops throughout the film. Because when I think of Blake Lively, I think of like the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, Gossip Girl, like kind of more lighthearted girly movies.
Yeah, this is totally like one of her. Well, actually, she was in a movie called Savages, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was in Savages.
That movie is terrible. Oh my god,
this isn't her first action
movie. Oh man,
okay. I don't remember. I've seen. I remember.
No
watching
wonder I had
Savages.
a bad feeling about this movie. It does not look good.
You're lying. You just said in the beginning, you're like, this is the trailer we're both excited for. So there must be a little bit of excitement hidden in there.
Well, I mean, like, maybe a tiny, tiny bit, but like, I don't know. I just said that. I'm
not, I should have just said that. You're lying. I'm not okay. So like the rhythm section is also based on a 1999 novel by Mark Burnell. There's not too much information about the novel.
And it's directed by the guy who did The Handmaid's Tale, so I imagine it'll be
Reed Morano.
Nice and violent, you know?
Right. Well, I mean, there are definitely guns, shooting, people definitely do die. But I'm interested to see the film because, again, one, it's Blake Lively. Two, again, I'm a fanatic of like suspense, drama, action. But I will say I'm not as overly excited as I was to see Bad Boys for Life because
you don't have a connection to this.
Right. But like the rhythm section is like I could possibly be down to see it in theaters, but I can wait. Like I can wait probably a month or two to go see it.
Yeah.
But regardless, I think it's still going to be a great film.
It's got Jude Law in it, so that's cool. Yeah.
And then Sterling K. Brown as well. I'm not sure. I don't think the plot is anything that we've never heard or seen of. Like a family gets killed.
Action movie.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, there's still curiosity in there for me to go watch this film.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, if you guys see it over the weekend, let us know what you think of it. It's not like there's a ton of movie options out there right now.
There's really not.
I'm just waiting for Sonic the Hedgehog on
Oh my God, on Valentine's Day. You've been talking about that movie since December.
I'm going to see it on opening weekend.
Oh, can you please let us know?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Let me know if that's a Jim Carrey movie.
It is.
That's a Jim Carrey movie.
I'm going to write an essay about how good that movie was. We will spend an entire podcast talking about how good or bad it was.
My goodness.
That's not true. We won't do that to you. Unless it's incredible, in which case I may spend like 10 minutes talking about it.
Right.
But I think that's all we've got for you guys today.
That was a lot. We covered a lot of movies.
Tons of movies.
So we had Yes Man, The Mask were my top 2, and then your top 3 were
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, The Truman Show, Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, honorable mention for Kidding, the TV show, which you should definitely check out if you have the ability to watch anything on like HBO, Showtime, Cinemax. I can't remember what it was. It's one of those special
Sonic
networks.
and the Hedgehog possibly could be another one on the list as well for top Jim Carrey movies.
It might be that. Well, it doesn't technically star Jim Carrey. He just is in it.
But
he's the main antagonist. So
right,
we'll
but
see.
still, he's in it.
Yeah.
I'm living for it. I live for Jim Carrey.
Yeah. So let us know your thoughts about what your favorite Jim Carrey movies are in the comments. Tweet at us, subscribe, like, leave us some reviews, share. Yeah, that would be great too. And thank you for joining us this week. We will be back next week.
Have a great week.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Movie Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.